Can't get rid of us that fast. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I'd just like to give you a real brief history of how it all got started. We call this one, Who Are We?
Welcome to the Dixie Hummingbird Podcast, Episode 1. My name is Michael Sims, and I'm the grandson of Ira Tucker Sr. In the studio today, we're going to have a few members of the Dixie Hummingbirds, and we're going to be interviewing them. And the person that's going to be interviewing them is my lovely wife, Kim.
Well, hello. I love the lovely.
Yes.
Well, I just want to say that it's a privilege to even be able to speak to the Dixie Hummingbirds today, because I listened to the Dixie Hummingbirds as a kid with my parents. I never knew I was going to grow up to marry the grandson of the Dixie Hummingbirds. So for me, this is truly a privilege and an honor. Like, some people might think, well, what's the purpose of this podcast? Why are we doing this? Well, the purpose is because in 1928, Mr. James B. Davis started this group. That was 10 years before Michael's grandfather even began. So when you think about that, there have been 90 years of men wearing the uniform. 90 years. That's amazing. So the story was told back then. It started in 1928. Here we are in 2018, and we're going to continue the story. So that's what we're here for today, to continue the story. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Lyndon Baines Jones, it is a pleasure to have you here to talk to you about your time with the Dixie Hummingbirds. So first, welcome.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Kim, so much. It's a pleasure being here.
Well, good. Glad.
Yes, it is.
You have a lot of experience with the group. And so I want to start by asking you, how did you become a member of the Dixie Hummingbirds, and when was that?
Well, back in 2000, Mr. Tucker was in search of a bass guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
He had a good friend in Philadelphia by the name of Mr. Bob Huff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was playing lead guitar for Bob's group, the Huff Singers. Mr. Tucker and Bob was very close, and so they did a collaboration, and so they was like conversing back and forth with each other throughout the course of the years and whatnot. And so Mr. Tucker reached out to Bob, and he said, "Well, Bob, I need a bass guitarist, man." And I say, "Well, do you have anybody in mind, or do you know anybody that I could, talk to or whatever?" And so Bob said, "Well, my guitarist, he plays lead and he plays bass. And so what I'll do, I'll put you in touch with him, and you guys can talk about it, And so, sure enough, Mr. Huff called me. He called me, said, he said, "Hey, Baines, look, Mr. Tucker, I was talking with Mr. Ira Tucker from the Hummingbirds." And I say, "Oh, yeah?" Okay, "The Dixie Hummingbirds?" He said, "Yes." He says he's looking for a bass guitarist, man, and I told him about you, and he wants to audition you. Bob told me, say, "Well, what I'll do is I'll get back in contact with Mr. Tucker, and I'll call you back and see when does he want to meet with you." And so, sure enough, that afternoon, Mr. Huff called me back and said, "Well, look, because Mr. Huff called me Youngblood. He said, 'Well, hey, Youngblood, well, Mr. Tucker would like to meet you, this afternoon or later on this evening, if possible.'" And I was like, "Oh, wow, they move fast, don't they?" And so he said, he asked me, say, would I be able to meet him? And I said, "Well, okay, yeah, Mr. Tucker." So right down, we met down around Ridge Ridge Avenue and Diamond Street.
Mm-hmm.
Because during that time, Mr. Bright had a store right in that area.
Yes.
And so we met down there. I think it was about 5:30 or 6 o'clock that afternoon. And so Mr. Tucker, this was on a Wednesday. And so Mr. Tucker said, Brother Jones, well, would you be able to come and do a rehearsal for me tomorrow night on Thursday, and just bring your bass guitar with you? And he said, he asked me, could I come and do the rehearsal with him? I said, yes, sir. I can come and do it for you. And that was going to be that Thursday evening. And so they was rehearsing that Thursday evening around 6 p.m. that evening, that Thursday evening. And so so I went over, and they was rehearsing at during that time James Williams. James Williams, they was rehearsing at his home, you know, in their basement and whatnot. And so I went over to James' house that Thursday evening, took my bass guitar, and so I got a chance to meet, you know, all of the fellas in the group at that time. And so I knew, you know, some of the songs, a lot of the songs that the Hummingbird was singing. And so but that particular night we got into rehearsal, and for some reason it was just like everything was like just clicked, you know. And so Mr. Tucker, he always was comical, man. He was very comical. So after rehearsal, he said, he came over to me, he said, hey dude, he said, well, would you consider going on tour with me? He said, man, I like the way you play that bass guitar. You fit right with us, you know. I said, yes, sir, Mr. Tucker. I said, well, I would love to go on tour with you, you know. When are you going? He said, tomorrow. I was like, oh, tomorrow? Are you serious? He said, yeah, we'll be leaving tomorrow afternoon, going to Monroe, Louisiana. And we'll be gone for like over a month, you know. And I was like, okay, wow, all right. I say, well, okay, well, could I have tonight to kind of think about it, and I'll call you first thing in the morning and let you know? He said, yeah, just take your time. I said, all right, sir. Well, so my mind was like, my mind is like clicking, like, oh man. I was like, okay, well, they say when the opportunity knocks, you got to rise to the occasion. And I was like, well, wow, okay. So I went home that night, and I was like, well, Lyndon, you know, what are you going to do? Are you going to take the plunge? Or are you going to let the opportunity bypass you, you know? And so I say, well, you know what? I'm an optimistic person. I'm very daring. And so I say, well, okay, I'm going to take the plunge. I'm going to go, and I'm going to try it. And so I called my family and told my family about it that night. And I said, well, you know, I'm going to go, and I'm going to take the opportunity. Mr. Tucker wants me to go on the road with him. And so I'm going to go. And so, and see which way it pans out or whatever. So I called him that morning. I thought about it that night, and I called him that morning. About 8:30. And I said, Mr. Tucker, he said, hey. I said, well, I thought about, you know, your offer. And I said, I'm going to take you up on your offer. I'm going to go. And he said, let me tell you something, son. He said, one thing I can tell you is that you won't regret it. Wow. And those was his words to me. Wow. That's what he said to me that morning. And so I got my clothes packed, and And so I packed, knowing that, you're going to be gone for a month. And so, and sure enough, they had a word that they normally say when they getting ready to leave. They say, well, we're going to pool. We're going to pool at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
That means that you got to be there and ready to go by 5 o'clock, because when he said we're going to pool, that's what he meant. Just pulling out is you're gonna leave to go where go wherever you're going. So man, and so I was like, okay, all right, well, I'll be there at 4:30, be ready to rock. And sure enough, 10 minutes to 5, hey, they was getting ready to close the van, getting ready to be by 5 o'clock. We was heading out. And so sure enough, we left out that afternoon, heading to Monroe, Louisiana, and we got out on 95, heading out. And so Mr. Bob Huff called me during that time, and he said, Baines, did you decide to go? I say, yes, sir, Mr. Huff, I decided to go. And he says, well, God bless you, son. He said, I really am glad that you made that decision to go. And he said, I think it would be a good thing for you. And I say, okay, well, what I do, Mr. Huff, I'll keep you posted on, every aspect of the tour, and let you know what happens and what transpires. And so he said, okay, he said, that'll be great. And sure enough, we went to, we traveled to Monroe, Louisiana, and we stayed in Monroe, Louisiana, and for that whole month, Mr. Tucker he started training all of us to for the upcoming shows that we had, that was on the books. And so we would in the morning, it was just like it was your regular job. You would get up in the morning, and 8 o'clock was your call time. 8 o'clock, you go in 8 o'clock, and you would rehearse 8 hours for that day. You would have like 30 minutes of two 30-minute periods where you have a 30-minute break in between time. And then after the 8 hours, if you felt as though you wanted to go into overtime, if everybody was in agreement with, rehearsing longer than 8 hours, he would do that. And so sometimes we would get into rehearsals 13, 14 hours a day.
Wow.
Per day. And seriously, really. And he would train you, he'd teach you the parts, what you wanted to, what he wanted you to sing, what he wanted you to play. And he would show you, and you would listen to the different songs and everything. And it was just like elementary school. It was like, man, he would take you from the bottom floor and teach you every grade, right on up throughout the 12th. And when he said that you were ready to go on the floor, you were ready, because he would train you. I mean, he would grill you from start to finish. And it wasn't that he had an ear. His ear was so good. I mean, he was like, man, he could just hear, he could hear notes. He could hear when anything was off the least little bit. Say, for instance, you were sharp, a little sharp, you was a little flat. He could hear it. I mean, he could hear it. He just had a natural knack for it. And man, it was really just great to, to be under his training, just to sit and listen at him, tell you how to create a song, how to create how to listen for notes, how to hit your notes on point, how to listen, and it was really phenomenal. And so I started out with the group playing bass guitar for the group on the first leg of the tour, and we was about halfway through the tour, and one day I was sitting outside, and James Williams, which was one of the original members of the Sons of the Birds. James had his guitar, and we all were sitting outside on the porch during the break, and so I asked James. I said, James, let me hold your guitar. Let me play your guitar for a minute. And so I was just sitting out on the porch, just playing around with a few things. And Enoch Webster was with us at that time. He was singing tenor for the group, and so Enoch come outside, and Enoch saw me playing guitar, and because Enoch always called me Rooster, right? And so that was his pet name for me. He said, "Hey, Rooster." He said, "Rooster, man, I didn't know you played guitar." He said, "How long you been playing guitar?" I said, "I've been playing guitar for several years, for a while, And he said, "Can you play some of the Hummingbird stuff?" I said, "Yeah, I played, the Hummingbird stuff." So I started playing some of the Hummingbird music and everything, and so Enoch went back inside, and Enoch called Mr. Tucker Pappy. So he said, "Hey, Pappy, you gotta come out here and listen to this guy, man. This guy, he's playing y'all stuff. He plays guitar, Pappy." And so Mr. Tucker come outside, and so we was at Reverend Moore's house in Monroe, Louisiana. We was at his house at the time, and so Mr. Tucker come outside, and so I was playing guitar, and so Tuck looked at me. He said, "Hey, dude, I didn't know you could play guitar." I said, "Yeah, Mr. T, I play," because I call him Mr. T, I said, "Yeah, Mr. T, I play guitar, and I play lead, and I play bass, So he was like, so he said, "Well, listen, play a couple more notes and a couple more songs there for me." And so I played a few things for him, and so he was like, he looked at some of the other brothers. He said, "Well, I'll be dog." He said, "This boy can play guitar and he can play bass too." He said, "Man, I didn't know that." And that's where things started to transition over. And so I played bass for the group for about a year and a half, maybe something like that. And then by Mr. Tucker knowing that I could play guitar, he started figuring out ways to infiltrate me into playing, a guitar for the group. So at one point, a little bit later on, there was a gentleman named Frank Frierson. Frank Frierson was from South Carolina, and so Mr. Tucker asked Frank. He asked Bright, Mr. Bright, William Bright. He said, "Bright, he said that boy you got from over in South Carolina, what's his name?" And Bright said, "Oh yeah, Mr. T. His name Frank Frierson." And he said, "Well, listen, can you get him on the line? And I'm thinking about a couple things here." And sure enough, Bright got in touch with Frank and talked with Frank. Told Frank, say, "Listen, I'd like for you to come out and join us on the tour." And so he said, "I want you to play bass for us." And sure enough, so Frank came. He came to Monroe, Louisiana, and we went into more rehearsals. And Frank started playing bass, and so this way, I could go on guitar. So Tuck wanted me to be on guitar. So what I did, I played backup guitar, behind James Williams, And so that's where the thing started to escalate, because the more that we played and we gelled together, things just started to, fall into place. And Tuck had that ear. He knew it.
Mm-hmm.
And he just kept working it. And it got down to a point where Tuck actually said, well, look, he said, Baines, he said, I want you to play lead for the group. I want you to play lead guitar for the group. And we're going to take it from there. And that's the way that he wanted it. And so, so that's how I, actually got, into the group and got my foot in the door, and he believed in me and he trusted me,
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Baines, you touched on something that I wanted to make sure that the listeners knew, because I don't know if they realize that three of the current members were actually trained by Pop. And I'm sorry, listeners, Pop is Ira Tucker Sr.
Mm-hmm.
You'll hear him called Tuck.
Yep.
You'll hear him called Mr. T. You'll hear many names.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to make sure everybody really realized that you, Tori Nettles, and Carlton Lewis were all personally trained by Pop.
Yes, we were.
And that's amazing that he
mm-hmm.
did that. He saw something in you, because based on what you just said about him and his ear and
mm-hmm.
what he was about, that goes to show the
mm-hmm.
faith that he had in each of you
mm-hmm.
to bring you in to the group, which I think is amazing. So I just want to make sure that all our little hummingbirdies out there
mm-hmm.
that are listening, that they realize that you all were hand selected.
Yes, we were hand selected by Mr. Ira Tucker Sr. Matter of fact, Carlton, when I first met Carlton, we did a show in Chicago, Illinois, and Carlton come over to the hotel where we were. And that's when I first met Carlton over in Chicago, and we all just gelled together, and so Carlton and Tuck, they had a rapport, down through the years, because Mr. Tucker recorded Carlton's mother. Mm-hmm. Then later on, Tori Nettles was from the same group that I was from. Bob Huff and the Huff Singers. Tori was playing drums and singing for the Huff Singers as well. It was just such a pleasure, to be able to be under his guidance, because, we as kids, we all grew up listening to the Hummingbirds, to different artists and things of that nature. And so, and when I heard that, Ira Tucker Sr. wanted me to come to an interview for him. Yes. Are you talking about the Ira Tucker? Wow. I was just elated, really. I really was, and it was really an honor. And I'm from a little town down in Georgia called Ashburn, Georgia. Okay. And so we grew up on the farm, back down in the country. And so it was like, how ironic is it for a little country boy, to actually come, and actually be hand selected by, a gospel legend, Mr. Tucker, to take over the lead guitar spot of Mr. Howard Carroll. One of the greatest influence in gospel music, guitarists that ever lived, you know what I mean? For myself, Carlton, Lewis, and Tori to be, gelled together to that magnitude, all of that came through by way of God, because it was like, our paths was guided to be connected like that. And we all are brothers, and we cut up, have fun, and when you're out on tour, man, Carlton and Tori, they are very comical.
Well, Baines, this has been some great information that you provided, and I thank you so much for it.
Yeah.
What we want to do now, I just want to wrap up by asking you this final question, and that is, what would be your fondest memory of being with the Dixie Hummingbirds, whether it was in the past or even present? What would you say stands out in your mind about your time here?
Well, what stands out in my mind, well, there's actually two. There's a lot more than that, but two that really stands out. I was taking Mr. Tucker to Virginia one day, and so we were listening to the radio, and the song "Love Your Fellow Man" came on, and I was talking to Pop. I said, Pop, hey, look, man, that song right there, man, you guys really did that song, "Love Your Fellow Man." And he hadn't performed that song in a long time. And I said, Pop, man, that song is beautiful, man. I said, did you ever think about bringing it back? He looked at me, he said, son, you want to bring it back? I said, yes, sir. He said, well, I tell you what, you play it for me and I'll sing it. And honestly, that was a moment that really stuck with me. It's like, because, I love that song. And for him to actually say, I will bring that song back because you asked for it, that just it just touched me, man. And sure enough, the very next time we went into rehearsal, I started playing "Love Your Fellow Man," and Pop sang it, and he put it in the lineup from that moment on. Really.
Wow.
Seriously. That really stood out, and that really touched me, because Pop had such a giving heart, man. He was the type of person, man. He was he was a perfectionist, and he had so much love for people, man. He would call you, and he would call you just to care, to see about how your day was going, and he, it's like, wow, that was just great. And, I know we got to close, but, the next thing that really stood out with me was when I went with him to New York to meet with Paul Simon.
Okay.
And so we went to New York, and we went to Paul's, because I drove him to New York. We went to Paul Simon's office. And so, and when we went inside of Paul's office, and just to see the closeness that he and Paul Simon had, it was just phenomenal. It's like these two mega entertainers together, interacting with each other, And then when we did the Warner Theater in Washington, D.C., and you had Paul, you had Tuck, and you had Stevie Wonder all in the same room, man, that was just that was it. That was just it. I mean, the things that actually happened that night was just phenomenal.
Wow.
And those are memories that I will always capture, and I will always keep dear to me, because it was like, it's just stuff that, don't happen every day,
Surely not.
Yeah.
And the song Paul Simon is the one that you won the Grammy for.
Yeah, love Me Like a Rock.
Love Me Like a Rock.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which I'm happy to say that Grammy is sitting in the Smithsonian Museum.
Yes, it is.
Which
Yeah.
you all got to play opening weekend 2 years ago, which was another wonderful, monumentous occasion.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thank you so much.
You're absolutely
for being
welcome.
here and for sharing your story.
Yeah. And when we were nominated for the Grammy for the album for Last Man Standing, that was really a great thing too. To be able to share that with Pop shared it with us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just stuff that you'll never forget.
And see, now you get to continue sharing it.
That's right.
That's great.
Yes, and we plan on doing that, continuing the legacy on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love to hear that. I mean, my husband, it's a family business
Yes.
for us. That's the way we look at it.
And that's what we want to do, is just continue the legacy.
We thank you.
You're
Thank
quite
you
welcome.
so much.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you so much. Welcome, Troy Smith. It's great to have you here. I mean, I got the opportunity to meet you when we were actually going to DC, and you were a member of the band.
Right.
When the group was going to perform for the opening of the Smithsonian's National African American Museum,
Right.
which was fantastic. But you came on playing keyboard, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so tell me how you went from playing keyboard, with the group, and then you transitioned into becoming a full-fledged member. How did that happen?
Well, we was in rehearsal. I remember we was in one of the band members in his basement, and they got to get there. They were singing some songs. I believe it was what song was it from the Hummingbirds? I could have been "Love Me Like a Rock." I'm not sure, but anyway, they got to sing it, but a tenor part was missing. They were trying to get Tori to do one of the tenor part, but I think it was too high from him. But since I listened to the Dixie Hummingbirds all my life, I saw that tenor part. From playing the keyboard, they're like, "Hey, that's the part right there." Let's do that again. So I wound up playing the keyboard and wound up singing that part, and they pretty much kept me up, singing the part up until this day.
Wow. So they said your days of playing the keyboard are over. Now you're a full-fledged member, or did it just automatically, you just knew the keyboard was done and now it's time for you to actually just sing?
Oh, I kind of felt that. The keyboard days was done. So in my mind, I had a back plan as a replacement keyboard player for our next engagement.
Okay.
They didn't know it yet, but I already had that worked out. I just knew, since they started with one song, there's probably going to be other songs that they want me to sing, and I caught on quick. Like I said, me and my twin, we've been listening to the Hummingbirds ever since we were young. I mean, we started the young quartet group at the age of 12, and our influences were the Dixie Hummingbirds and the Soulsters. Sam Cooke and the Soulsters. And this was back in 76. I think we were 12 years old, back in 76. And it was me. It consisted of me, my twin brother, and my two cousins.
Okay.
One of my cousins he's a bass, and his brother was a baritone. We just start singing, and my grandfather, who was a pastor, he used to have us sing at the church. And we would sing at the church, and we would do those types of songs. We'd do the Dixie Hummingbird songs, we would do the Soulsters songs, and so forth like that. And it was such a liking to the audience that everywhere that he ministered to, each church that he ministered to, he took us along with them. And before you know it, we started getting requests to go here and there and there and so forth. So when opportunity came to play, because me knowing Baines, I did other groups, besides my brothers in the group, but the other groups too. And this is how I got to know Baines. So when Baines had asked me, come to one of the rehearsals, because he knew me from previous groups, I said, yeah. So I started playing for them, and they liked me playing. But then when they heard me catch on to one of the Hummingbird songs, I was like, yeah, okay. All right. So, from there it just went on,
Wow. Well, tell me, from the DC trip a couple years ago, here you are. You've been asked to play in the band for the Dixie Hummingbirds, and you've been asked to go to DC for this humongous weekend. What was that experience like for you?
That was an awesome experience. First of all, to be playing for the Dixie Hummingbirds was awesome. You know, these is one of the things that I dreamed about as I was young. You know, these are different groups that my father would play his records. My grandfather would play his records. And we just fell in love with them. Ira Tuck and his soaring, him and James Walker, when they get together and they acrobatics of their vocals, using going back and forth, and the knit harmonies between Beachy and was it Beachy and Howard Carroll, Bobo, and all those guys. And when they come together, for a kid like us, this was thrilling. So, so to be in that group, like I said, it was just it was an amazing experience for me. It was a dream come true. So I look at myself, wow, I come a long way from here. Now I'm playing with them. Now I'm on the stage at DC and Washington and playing among people. It's like, wow, this, God is good.
Absolutely. And now singing.
Now singing for him, right?
Now singing, which is well deserved, because for us to see you and hear you, especially the performance in October,
right? You
all were phenomenal.
Right.
So it was fantastic. So well deserved. So now you went from you played the tenor, you did the keyboard, you sang the tenor part. How did it happen that here comes Roy? So for our listeners, Roy is Troy's twin.
Right.
We call him the Walter and Scotty of gospel. So please tell me, how did it happen that you said, I have a brother who can sing, or what happened with that?
Well, that was one of our dreams too. If one of us make it, we're gonna bring the other one in. So,
nice.
And I think we were rehearsing for another gig after the Washington gig, and we were rehearsing in one of the members' basement, and I said, this time I'm gonna bring my brother along with me because he can play keyboards too. Mm-hmm. I was still deciding which keyboard player I was gonna have. Either it was gonna be my brother or another young gentleman I knew, but I knew my brother could sing too, and I knew that. I'm counting the members that we have now. So I'm saying to myself, okay, we can use a person here, we can see a person. They don't know what I'm thinking. So I brought my brother along, and he was at the rehearsal. He sat along William Bright. Mm-hmm. I'm on the keyboard just playing. And they got the rehearsing and things like that. And it was a note that my brother heard. He knew the song. And he's sitting right next to Bright, and he hummed the note. And Bright turned around, looks at him, and said, "That's right." Bright talking, "Yeah, that's it, that's the note right there, that's the note." And I'm smiling and playing the keyboard. I'm like, things are rolling. It's at the works. So, unfortunately, our Bright passed away, and it was a void there. And I know that they were, in search of, other members. Mm-hmm. And I talked to Carlton, I said, look, my brother knows this music also. I said, you search and you doing different things. He knows how to pick this note, so why not give him? So he said, okay. He had check with the man in there, set up, the interview where he can audition. And he auditioned, and he just passed it with flying colors from there. He just that's the note we're looking for. He got the walker voice. He had all, the whole 9 yards, and that's how it pretty much flew from there.
That's awesome.
Yep.
That is awesome. Well, what would you like to see in the future as it relates to gospel quartet and the Dixie Hummingbirds? Like, if you could just foresee and say, this is what I'm hoping for, what would that be?
Well, especially that nowadays, with the newer generation quartets coming up, I would like to see that this set of Dixie Hummingbirds, we could bring back that same fervor and fire that the older Dixie Hummingbirds had.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, those guys were brilliant.
Mhm.
And then there's a lot of groups that still of this day cannot do that. But with this set and the talent that we have with these gentlemen here that I'm working with and the personalities, we can do that. We can bring that here. You know, I believe right now it's just hitting the surface. I believe that you didn't see anything yet.
I love it. I love it. I agree with you, Troy, and I'm looking forward to it. Michael and I are in it for the long haul. This is a legacy that we're helping to preserve, and I'm just glad that you made the cut. So thank you so much for being here.
I'm like the Carson Wentz right now, the young guy here, but you see how awesome he is, right?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Welcome, Mr. Carlton Lewis III. It's great to have you here today. Like, I'm really excited that you're here to talk to us today about your time with the Dixie Hummingbirds.
Grateful to be here. Grateful to be here. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Well, tell us from the beginning. Like, how did you become a member of the group, and when was that?
Well, that happened by way of me doing something my parents taught me not to do. Ear hustle. I came to Philadelphia to speak with some of the people at Mount Sinai Baptist Church because Mr. Tucker had informed me that they were looking for a pastor. And so I got my little resume together, sent it with him. He brought it back to Philadelphia. And a month went by, didn't hear from anybody. Another month went by, didn't hear from anybody. So something just spoke to me. It was like, man, get in your car and go over there because you never know what could happen when you just get there. Just go. So my father and his cousin, his first cousin, Ellis, threw me in the back of the Cadillac and we headed out. Got here, Miss Tucker tried to reach some folks at the church, no dice. And so it was just like a blank run. But Mr. Tucker took us out to eat, my father and I, and we were sitting at the table, and he was looking very concerned because his tenor singer worked on the Merchant Marine ship and was leaving, and he was going to be down a man, and he had these dates, and he didn't know what he was going to do for a tenor singer. And I'm ear hustling. I'm listening to him talk to Baines. Man, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And something just said, throw caution to the wind, interrupt this man's conversation and ask the question. And I did. Mr. Tucker, yes, son, can I take his place? Huh? I'm serious. Can I take his place? Well, can you sing? I sang a little bit. You sing tenor? I don't know. You sing baritone? Man, I don't know. Do you sing at all? I'm like, well, yeah, So we went out in the parking lot, and I started singing the parts I could hear on the tapes of the old Hummingbirds in the van. And Pop was like, can you travel? I said, I got here, didn't I? And so from 8:30 that night to about 12:30 midnight, I was praying, and I was just like, wow, man, what if this happened? I didn't come here for this. I came here to meet with some folk about passing their church. And 1:30 that morning, phone rang, and it was Mr. Tucker. He said, you need to call home, check it out with your folks back home, because as far as I'm concerned, you're in the group. And that was in March. Wow, this is March, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That was in March of 2003.
Wow. Just like that.
Just like that. Ear hustling. Something I would have got spanked for, got a ruler to the hand, a razor strap to the backside for ear hustling.
Now, what was your first, like, what did he do? Like, did he start to train you? Like, how did that happen?
Well, as with a lot of, quartet singers, a lot of your training really comes from listening. So I would hear what was going on, but I didn't have anybody to technically break it down. And that's what he did. A lot of, when you feel like you're the best, one of the best that your city has to offer, and you can't very well be because you don't know much about singing, that little ego has to be broken down. And one of the things that I really thank and praise God for was Mr. Tucker's ability to work with each of us in our own respective way at our own speed, So with me, he broke me all the way down. I remember leaving rehearsal about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning one day, crying because Pop basically told me I couldn't sing. He didn't even know why I even picked up a microphone. And but he didn't fire me. And so I called home and I was like, Mama, Mr. Tucker, he did this, he said so and so. She's like, well, did he fire you? And I was like, no. Well, then shut up and listen to what the man has to teach you. He's trying to teach you something. And it like, well, okay, yeah, he is. And so he broke me all the way down and built me back up the way he wanted me to be built. Wow. From the technical side of singing, just basic singing. We're not even talking about the idiosyncrasies of Dixie Hummingbird harmony. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about basic singing. He built me all the way up in that. And from there, I was able to kind of evolve on my own and pick up what he was doing. And I could hear the voices distinctively and things of that nature. So I really thank God for that, man. Mm-hmm. I miss him so much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, tell me, when did you realize, or did you realize, that he was molding you and shaping you almost into a mini him? And I say that because when I first heard you sing, my husband and I could not believe how much you reminded us of him with your stage presence, the way you sang, everything. So did you ever really realize that he was molding you into that?
It never really dawned on me. What he basically instilled in us was that if every man does his job, then this group will go and it will work. So just as Lyndon's job is guitar and vocals, and Tori's job is vocals and things of that nature, he put in me that idea or that mindset that you have to do what you have to do to sell this group, sell the group. The group name sells itself. But when it comes down to, the proof, they say the proof is in the pudding. Proof ain't in the pudding, it's in the eating. It could not taste like pudding, So when it comes down to that stage, you have to do what you have to do to sell the group. And the things that I would watch him do, I would kind of find myself emulating it because, it just looked cool. And it sounded awesome, So I'm like, let me try this. And I really didn't realize it, but the day that in 2008, in January 2008, we were at the Keswick Theater. I'm on the road coming in for this show, and I get a phone call, and it's Pop. Hey, dude. I'm like, what's happening, Pop? Man, I'm just calling to tell you that I'm feeling good. I'm like, what good? I'm in the hospital now. I'm like, what? So are you coming to the show? Or are they going to let you go? Or what kind of hospital visit is this? No, you got it tonight. And I'm like, don't worry. You got it. You do anything that I can do. And it was like that kind of encouragement. And I'm like, who in the world gets that kind of encouragement from a gospel music icon
Mm-hmm.
such as him, you can do anything that I can do. You know, all you got to do is just set your mind to it, pray, and y'all will be successful. That's what he said. And I drove the rest of the way very nervous, but very encouraged
Mm-hmm.
that we were going to make this happen. And we did.
Wow. So, how did you feel during that show?
I felt very nervous, but very encouraged that we were gonna do what we had to do.
Did you? Did you do what
we
he
took
thought?
care we took care of business. I think it really hit home with me after he had, of course, passed away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We were in a group meeting, and we were told by management that all of our promoters for the next 2 years were wondering if they should cancel the tour or if they were going to keep it going. And everything rode on this particular performance in Avalon, New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't have time to think about how much pressure that was, but hindsight being 2020, your tour for the next 2 whole years, that's your mortgage, food, gas, all of that stuff rides on this one show. I didn't think about it. I just went out there, and the fellas and myself, we had fun, true enough, but we went out there with the understanding if we all did what we were supposed to do, if we all did what he trained us to do, what he taught us to do, you know, the rehearsals, those 12, 14-hour rehearsals, you know, all that stuff. If we just did it, put it in practice, and remember that, you know, God was with us and so was he, we would be all right. And we finished that 2-year tour off of that night.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. He had an awesome teacher.
Yeah, I agree.
How do you feel it's going today? Do you feel that things that you've learned from him are things that you're continuing to instill in your group members today?
I feel that we are right at that brink. We're right at the brink. A lot of what Pop prepared us for was not just singing, wasn't just performing, how to cut a record or whatever. He prepared us for life in the music business, life in show business, and how your fans, you know, can make or break you. What your fans have to say, what they think versus what they know, sometimes are 2 totally different things. But you can't really worry. You worry about it, but you can't really worry about it because you got a job to do, you know. And it has become more than just a job. It's a calling. It's something that all of us believe in very strongly, very heavily. And when you believe in something and you love something that much, you fight for it. Anything worth having is worth fighting for. So we continue in that. You know, we realize that there's going to be some folks that are mad at us because we're not them. Some folks that are mad because they're not us. You know, some folks will be mad or upset because they think that we should have Lyndon on the guitar and the rhythm bass like back in the day. Some folks will be mad because we got music now. You know, whatever your hang up is, you know, you're entitled to that. But when God ordains something, when he puts something together and ordains it, and he personally handpicks the people that he wants in the mix, whether you like it or not, you can't stop it. You know, and that's how I feel about this thing of ours called the Dixie Hummingbirds. Whether you like it or not, you can't stop it.
All right.
You know.
All right. That is correct. I love it. Well, this question I have for you, because I'm very curious, because I know that you think deeply about these things. And I want to know how do you see the future as it relates to Gospel Quartet and the Dixie Hummingbirds?
I think that if I really put my mind to it, I think we will be that flagship group, not because of anything that we have done per se, but because of the foundation that was laid from Mr. Davis, Pop, Mr. Walker, Mr. Beachy, Mr. Bobo, Mr. Howard. Those guys laid an impeccable foundation. And it wasn't so much rooted in the genre of music that they chose to sing. It was more so laid because of what we're in. We're in the music business. And the group that we have has a name that will last the test of time. Somebody will come to a Dixie Hummingbird concert 20 years from now and still be inspired to go back home and try some of the stuff that they saw or what they heard on the record or the CD or the MP3, whatever the medium is, or the live stream. They'll be inspired to try that. As long as that's happening, generation, year to year, we've done what we were supposed to do. In the grand scheme of things, I think we'll always be that flagship group. We will always carry ourselves as members of that flagship group and as walking testaments of what Mr. Davis established in 1928. That's where I see us 20 years from now.
Nice. Well, I have a final question for you. I want to know, what is your fondest memory of being with the Dixie Hummingbirds, whether past or present? But what is your fondest memory?
That's a loaded question.
Why?
So many of them are fun. I think probably one of the fondest memories I had was the first time we went overseas with Pop. We got in the airplane. We're going overseas. We're in Newark, New Jersey, sitting on a tarmac, taxiing. And I'm a little nervous. I look back, Pop sitting back here. Son, you all right? Like, yeah, Pop, I'm fine, man. I'm fine. Okay, don't worry, it's going to be all right. We're going to be fine now. We're going to be fine. I said, you know what? This is cool. This old man ain't scared of nothing. Man, I love Tuck, man. This is true. I hear some mumbling in the back. I turn around, Pop back here. God is our refuge and strength, very present help every time. I said, Pop, I thought you wasn't scared. Is it going to be all right? I thought you wasn't scared. Man, get somewhere and sit down. Turn around. And then when we landed in Helsinki, I seen all these armed guards walking around with Uzis. And we walking we looked like flies in a bowl of milk. And I mean, we were just walking, and they had them Uzis. They was ready for action. I'm like, oh God, they gonna kill us. They gonna shoot us. Pop, how you get us over here, man? They gonna kill us, man. He said, son, the only reason why they would think about opening fire on us is because you won't close your mouth. Shut up and keep walking. That was that trip. But I guess the biggest thing that really sticks out in my mind is, when we hear the little naysayers and the little flack or whatever, I always let my mind go back to when he took us to Mr. Davis's house. He took Lyndon and myself over to Mr. Davis's house. You talking about scared. Because all my life I heard about how strict a man Mr. Davis was, how staunch he was, And it wasn't like we were bad people or anything, but it's like, yo, you going to meet the man. This is the man. And so we sat there. Lyndon played a little bit. Me and Pop harmonized. We sung. And Mr. Davis would go back into, stuff back in the day. Tuck, you remember when BG did so. And it was just like a surreal trip. And he really didn't say much to us at all. But when we got ready to leave, he walked us to the door. And he said, well, bro, Tuck, looks like you got you some good men here. I believe that they're going to work for us. And when he said us, I was like, wow, we have that, he's in on this and he approves us. Wow, Mr. Davis, the guy that started it all, said we were all right. That was like the Eagles winning the Super Bowl to me.
Hey, sounds good.
But those are my two fondest memories.
Those are great memories. Those are great memories. And since this is a continuation of the Dixie Hummingbird story, there will be more to come.
Oh, you will add to it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. And we look forward to the next time.
All right.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Wow. Today was amazing. What a pleasure to really get the opportunity to interview some of the Hummingbirds. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. I really learned a lot. Stay tuned though, because we still have some Hummingbirds to hear from. We need to hear from Tori Nettles, Ira Tucker Jr., and Roy Smith. So those are coming, so just stay tuned for that. And if you haven't done so already, please go out to YouTube and subscribe to our channel. Also, if you haven't done so, please go to Facebook and join our Facebook page. We would really, really appreciate it. And any comments or questions that you may have that you want to ask any of the Hummingbirds or even myself, please contact us at thedixiehb@gmail.com. That's THEDIXIEHB@gmail.com. thedixiehb@gmail.com. We look forward to seeing you next time. But until then, Hummingbirdies, bye.
Beaming from heaven, visions I see, angels and loved ones beckon for me. The